we can protect our health care is by making sure that everybody in Vermont has the same health care that we have. And then they've gone to the people of Vermont and said, we want you all to have the health care that we have as your employees, and we're going to help lead that fight for health care justice in Vermont. And that's the sort of vision that can rebuild and revitalize the labor movement. As we speak today, there's a strike going on in Atlantic City at the Trump Taj Mahal. You may have heard of that guy. He's wrecked casinos all across America, thrown them into bankruptcy. This casino has been in bankruptcy for several years. It was bought out by his good buddy, Carl Icahn, a guy that he says ought to be his Secretary of Treasury. And Carl, to take it out of bankruptcy, got the judge to order that all 1,200 workers at the Taj Mahal lose all of their health care coverage. So these are workers who are they're not high-paid workers. These are hotel maids and bartenders and stuff. They're suddenly thrown out there without any health care whatsoever. So there's a vicious strike going on in Atlantic City. As we speak today in Minnesota, 5,000 nurses, the people who give you health care, are out on strike against the Allina Hospital Corporation because that corporation wants to eliminate their decent union plan and throw them into a corporate plan with $5,000 deductibles and co-pays and all of the other stuff that we experience. As we speak right now, 30 minutes ago, thousands of retired mine workers are marching in Washington, D.C. because the U.S. government is welching on the promise that they made 50 years ago to mine workers that they would ensure that these people who went into those deep holes and mined coal for America, that they would always have a continuation of health care coverage through a combination of government intervention and holding the coal operators accountable for people's health care. These are thousands of mine workers, many of whom are made ill by their years underground, who have the potential of losing their health care. So health care is, if you think of the issue that most threatens the security of working class families, health care has got to be in the top 1 to 5 issues for every family. The Affordable Care Act, which now we're in the 7th year of, does make things better for many people. And it would make things better, by the way, for many more people if states like South Carolina would accept federal money to expand the Medicaid plan to working class poor people in the state of South Carolina. I've said this before, but this is a moral nightmare to have a state, for political reasons, refuse federal money, free money, your tax money, to expand health care coverage to tens of thousands of South Carolinians. So your tax money is going to help pay for health care for working poor people in New Jersey and California and Illinois and all these other states, but they won't allow it to go to your neighbors here in South Carolina. This is it's just a crime. These politicians need to be held accountable for that. The ACA has expanded insurance coverage for millions of Americans, sometimes with subsidies for health insurance. But what we have under the ACA is basically people now have the right to buy health insurance, but they do not have the right necessarily to health care. And people are finding that, these policies that they have to buy, often the deductibles, the co-pays, the contributions to these policies are so great that if a family has a major illness, they still do not have enough coverage to keep them out of bankruptcy and financial catastrophe. So there's been a step forward, but it has not changed the basic dynamics of a healthcare system that treats healthcare not as a public good, which is what most Americans think healthcare ought to be treated like, a public good like education and libraries and firefighting and all of these other basic public necessities, but it treats it as a business and as a commodity. And as long as it treats it that way, rather than as a public good, you're going to have these kind of problems, because at the core of our healthcare system, you'll have a bunch of people, a bunch of businesses that are interested exclusively in the profit motive of delivering health care to people. So you have a health insurance industry, a for-profit healthcare insurance industry that makes money by denying you health care. That's their profit model. That's a toxic business model if anybody's seen one. You have a pharmaceutical industry that is so powerful that they can just blatantly do whatever they want to extort money from the sickest Americans. You know, one scandal after another that you see coming out of the pharmaceutical industry. Anytime we've tried to regulate them, they've just been able to stop everything in its track in Congress and the state houses around the country. So you have all of these structures that stand between the American people and their health care, and then that generates a whole system of waste and inefficiency that ripples down throughout the system so that we have costs that are almost twice as much as any industrialized country in the world. We pay almost twice as much for health care, and we don't really get much better health care. If you're a rich white guy and you need open heart surgery, you might do pretty good under this healthcare system if you got the money and the resources and everything else. But if you're a poor black woman with diabetes living in Newark, New Jersey, you don't have much better health care than people in many third world countries have on health care. So it also generates massive inequalities and reinforces the inequalities at the core of the system.